Howdy. This is the Views from the Schott podcast. I'm your host, your one and only host, Tim Miller, and today it is Wednesday, January 14th, 2025, and I wish you a very, very, very happy Take a Missionary to Lunch day. On today's show, we have a former Ohio State player who hit one of the most iconic shots in program history with a three-pointer from the right wing to knock off then undefeated Illinois a couple years ago. It's Matt Sylvester joining the show today. We are going to get a lot into the state of the program. What do we think about Jake Diebler? What direction is the program going in? And a whole bunch of topics like that. Matt's got a very unique vantage point at this point, so love having the conversation with him here today. If you're new to the show, please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. We're on every podcast platform. You can also subscribe on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube right now, please like the video. That helps out a bunch. And you know the Substack is available to you as well. Viewsfromtheshottpodcast.substack.com. That's where you can get a bunch of additional free content. That's the only Ohio State basketball exclusive hub in the world. So I encourage you to get there. If you'd like to subscribe to the Insider Chat, can get you a free week there as well for some more scoops and info and things like that. So, Matt, welcome. Thanks so much for being here. How has it been this year watching Ohio State basketball for you personally? I know it's been, again, we know where it is at this point. It's been a rough few years for Ohio State basketball, but how does this year compare to previous years?
Thanks for having me, Tim. And I probably am in the same boat as a lot of the fan base, and that there's been some frustrations. There's been some good things. I think it's certainly an improved team upon last year. But I also understand that people want more, and fans always want more. And I can't say that it's been different for me, I think when you look at the season, I think when you look at the non-conference schedule, you had a couple games that had they gone the other way, and Ohio State was right there, that you're probably looking at the season already drastically different. And obviously that's the Pitt game where for 2 years in a row you get beat on a buzzer beater from three. That's a tough way to go down. Buckeyes were right there. They were in control in that game. Would have been a great win. And then obviously in the Carolina game, Ohio State was in the driver's seat, and a deflection happens late. It happens to fall right into a 7-footer's hands, and he dunks it, And so you're two bounces of the ball away from probably looking this season through a different lens. And then obviously in conference play, I certainly haven't been real surprised just from kind of seeing the team and being around a little bit and knowing what the Big Ten is and especially what it is this year and pretty much year in and year out. I knew that Buckeyes would take some lumps, but I think at the same time they still control their own destiny. There's a lot of wins to be had that would be statement wins and resume builders. So I'm probably in a very similar place than a lot of the fan base.
So as we get into this conversation, I just want to first start by setting the stage for why you're even qualified to be here. There are some people, quite frankly, who probably have no idea your significance to the program just because of their age, like for no other reason. I know my listeners at this point to know that there's some really young listeners out there who would say, I never even got to see Ohio State when they were elite. I barely remember that. So if that's the case, they certainly were not conscious when you were making shots for Ohio State. So take me through, not necessarily, I mean, we don't need you to prove your background as a college basketball player at Ohio State, but more so what you're doing today and the conversations you have, the things you get to see that are behind the scenes that really allow you to feel like you can be not just opinionated, but valid in your opinions too on Ohio State basketball.
Sure. I can't say that I'm ultra connected anymore to the program. I mean, the program has been absolutely great to me. A reason that I love it, and it's truly like a family. The program's never said no to me. Whether it's tickets for a game or coming down to bring my kids to the Schottenstein Center and have carte blanche to run around or go in the locker room after games. And but with that being said, I'm a student of the game. I grew up in the game of basketball. My dad was a professional basketball player in Italy. I quite literally grew up at 2 years old going to basketball practices, professional basketball practices on a daily basis. Um, and then I was player of the year in the state of Ohio my senior year, and came up to Ohio State, and have been, obviously a fan, and have really not just watched Ohio State basketball, but I've really studied it. I know Coach Diebler pretty well. I know several other guys on staff. Terrence Stiles was my teammate for 4 years at Ohio State. So, I think I certainly have more of an insight than maybe just the average fan walking around. But with that being said, I'm not ultra, present down there at the Schottenstein, going to a ton of practices. But again, I've seen the game and studied it and watched it long enough to and have enough intimate knowledge and inside knowledge of the program to, I think, be able to speak pretty accurately about it, I hope.
Yeah, and I will say this too. You've gone to more practices than I have been to. I can confirm that because I've been to zero.
Sure,
However, it's not just that. I think it's also just the fact that it's the argument I make all the time with playing time, in that these coaches are around these players all the time.
sure, sure,
There's no one more educated, there's no one better to make decisions about playing time than the coaching staff
sure,
themselves. There's a
sure,
lot of fans who say, "Well, I don't trust the coaching staff, so I don't trust their decisions."
sure, sure,
That's fine. We just have to kind of shake hands and part ways at this point. But you, even having the vantage point to be able to see some practices and be able to see what's going on behind the scenes at some times and have
sure.
conversations, I think that's super valuable. And by the way, so Matt joined the show during the summer guest series this year, talked about his recruitment, talked about getting recruited hard by Coach Huggins as well. That conversation was fantastic. I
That
think
was
over
fun.
an hour long. So highly recommend, if you didn't get a chance to listen to that episode, or if you didn't get a chance to listen to it all the way through, highly recommend you get there. Okay, so let's get into this, Matt. So like, as we look at the top 10% and the bottom 10% of the fan base, if we
Sure.
wipe those out and we just look at the middle 80 of the fan
Mhm.
base, the large swath of Ohio State basketball fans, I think right now they would say, I miss the good old days. I miss when this program was elite under Thad Matta. I miss when they were uh, contending for Big Ten championships and making runs in the NCAA tournament and all that. And over the past couple of years, especially, they can't even make the NCAA tournament. So, in regards to just how you see the program right now,
Sure.
how do you feel? Is it trending up? Is it trending down? Is the arrow just sideways at this point? In general, take me through just main ideas of where your stance is on Ohio State basketball right now.
Sure. I believe in Coach Diebler. I really do. I think he's a tremendous leader of young people. I think he's got a great basketball mind. Um, but if I'm trying to be totally objective, I'm not sure that right now the roster we have in place, I'm not sure it's a roster that competes for a Big Ten championship. Maybe one that even makes a Big Ten tournament. I think it's really close, but I'm not sure that we got the horses just at the moment. And I hope nothing more than that they prove me wrong and make me eat my words. But I just think that in relation to the Big Ten, that's only gotten better. It's only grown and added West Coast teams. I mean, it's gotten a whole lot harder certainly than when I was there to win a Big Ten championship. My senior year, we were fortunate enough to win the Big Ten outright. It was the first time in, I think, a decade or so that it had been done. So obviously something I take great pride in. But I think it's gotten harder. I think the coaches have all gotten better. I think the league has gotten better. It's gotten bigger in terms of number of schools. And so, yeah, I mean, I think kind of where the Buckeyes are at the moment, I think that's who they are, and I don't know that it's all on the players' shoulders. I'm not sure it's all on Jake's shoulders. I think it's a combination of a lot of different things. But I understand the frustration in the fan base, and speaking for myself, March Madness is nowhere near as fun for me when I don't get to gamble on the Buckeyes and see them in the field, so I understand people's frustration, and it's tough. It really is, and I'm certainly pulling for them, but I haven't been sold just as of yet that it's the team that can win a Big Ten that can get themselves in the tournament just yet. But again, they have a lot of opportunities to do so, and time will tell. I hope they prove me wrong in a big way.
Yeah, I mean, back when you were playing the Big Ten Conference, big brained it and had 10 teams in the
Yep.
conference. Just a few
Yeah.
years ago, you go from 14 to 18. So just the competition level goes up, obviously, when you add the amount of teams that you've added to the Big Ten. So that's one thing that I think a lot of fans, even if you're a Michigan State fan, you're an Illinois, Indiana fan, whatever the case may be, just kind of set the expectations of the conference has almost doubled in size over the
Mhm.
past 10, 15, 20 years. And because of that, it's just objectively going to be harder to win a Big Ten conference. But one thing you mentioned about Jake Diebler that you like about him is that you feel like he's a good leader of young men. Seems like one thing he can really do is connect with players. So from what you've seen, kind of take me through some things that you think, man, I think Coach Diebler excels here. I think he's really good here. I
Sure.
trust him in these areas.
No, I think I trust him in really all areas. I really do. I think he's a good young coach. I think he's a good leader. Even just X's and O's stuff I've seen this year, I really like the stuff they're doing offensively. I think at times they've been a really good man-to-man defense. I'm not sure I've loved the kind of tandem, very extended 2-3 zone. I'm not sure that helped them a whole lot, at least in the last game against Washington. Um, I think Jake's been a good recruiter, but maybe not quite good enough. I thought last year there was injuries. Clearly, that didn't help him. Neither did an injury to Tilly last game help because we were right there and he was having a good game. But I think that last year there was a couple of a kind of swing and a miss in the transfer portal. I think this year we made some good moves in the portal. Losing Knoll and that inside presence didn't help. And when I look at Tilly, I think Tilly's a good player. But I thought one thing in the Washington game. I'm not sure that Tilly's a guy that against another team that has a good interior like Washington did. I mean, you talk about the freshman Steinbach. That kid's probably going to make money playing the game one day. He's big time. Kep Nang, that interior. I think when you have guys like that, I don't think Tilly demands a ton of attention. I think he's a guy that most bigs in the Big Ten will play him one-on-one, and I think that what that does is it enables the defense to really stay sticky to guys like Bruce and Junie. And when you look at the Washington game, they basically didn't let Junie breathe. I mean, they made up their mind that he was simply not going to get any open threes, and it led to him having to put the ball on the deck and make be a little bit more of a decision maker when going downhill, and led to some kind of careless turnovers. Bruce got 28. But it was one of those games where it felt like he just really had to work for all of it, I think that Tilly is more that kind of big European skill type of big, and I don't know that he commands a ton of help in the middle, I think you've got Devin Royal, who I love. He's had a tremendous season. I do think Devin's playing a little bit out of position. He's probably a little bit more of a natural kind of strong forward, but he's been playing a little bit more of a three this year. He's done it great. I think Bruce is just the consummate winner. I think he's a guy that's going to find his way into the NBA, and him sticking around and his loyalty clearly speaks volumes to Jake's ability to develop relationships. And to be able to keep Bruce around what was phenomenal, I just, like I said, I'm just not sure that the pieces are there. And in my opinion, I don't know that if you gave the same roster to Coach K or Coach Izzo or whoever, I'm not sure that they're in a whole lot different place today, to be totally honest with you. And maybe that comes back to recruiting, which ultimately falls on Jake's Coach Diebler's shoulders as well. But again, I don't know that it's time to hit the panic button. I really don't. I think there's, again, a lot of great opportunities ahead, and it only takes a couple of really good statement wins to really turn this whole thing around. But I think it'll be tough, like it always is, and I hope they can get it done.
Yeah, I think one thing you mentioned that's interesting on Christoph Tilly is the kind of lack of attention that he commands when the ball is in his hands, because really when he scored this year, a lot of times it's been either running in transition
Mhm.
or
Yep.
starting with the ball at the 3-point
Sure.
line and then making
Right.
his way
Yeah.
in as a driver.
Mhm.
Ohio State does not have really a traditional back you down center, which I know the game is changing in that way.
Sure.
But the advantage of that is if you've got Christoph Tilly backing someone down, you can kick it out to the open side for a three to John Mobley Jr. that can open up a lot of space. That can open up a lot of skip passes, rotating the ball, things like that, where you can do a little bit more, which I feel like you haven't seen that a lot this year or last year under Jake Diebler at this point. So as you look at roster construction, last year was a completely different approach from this year. And I think as we came into this season, I posted a clip of myself and Connor Lamont talking back in October about how we felt, look, this starting five is really, really good. We can see it from the 1 to the 5, from Thornton down to Tilly. We could see it. But the bench had a lot of question marks. And if you were going to deal with injuries, and Ohio State's had some really bad injury luck to this point, if you're dealing with injuries, you're going to struggle to put together complete 40-minute games. So what do you see in terms of roster construction from what Jake Diebler's done to this point? What do you
Mhm.
like? What would you say needs to be tweaked?
I absolutely love, I think like everybody else does, I love Amari Bynum. I mean, I think that is a stud freshman. I think that's a guy that's going to be in the NBA. But he's still a freshman, and when you look at, again, just this last game, the Washington game, Amari came out and had an unbelievable first 10, 12 minutes of the game. I mean, he was doing it all, knocked down a three, had a dunk, had a block, had a nice little fadeaway. I mean, really was doing it all. But he's a freshman, in the second half, he missed a couple threes. And then the next thing you know, Washington kind of just backed off of him. And he kind of lost confidence a little bit and he couldn't knock a shot down. He missed, a couple 3-4 dunks. Had a play late, did Bynum, where he was running the floor. And I think it was like a 2-point game. Do you pronounce it Chatham or Chatham?
Chapman, yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
Chatham, who's going to be another topic, I'm sure. But Chatham dropped him a great little pass, and Bynum went into a power dribble instead of just going up for a quick, 1-2 finish off 1 foot, quick dunk. So little things like that. Where in that Washington game, we just didn't finish real well around the rim late, and then losing Tilly really hurt because Wegoven had to play extended minutes. Whereas in the first half, Wegoven was coming in two minutes at a time, and he made some really nice contributions early in the game. Late, it got tough for him, and ultimately, I thought in that Washington game, towards the end, it was just the more physical team won. I thought Washington kind of wore us down physically, and but back to the roster, again, I like Tilly. He's a skilled big. He's kind of got that point center kind of thing. I like him. Is he dynamic? Is he above the rim guy like a lot of these players are in the Big Ten? He's not. But with that being said, he's had a solid year. Losing Noel was tough. And again, I love what Devin Royal has done. I think he's had a great year. I thought in the Washington game, I thought he got frustrated a little bit, and it led to some out of character kind of plays for him. And then we're not getting a ton from the bench. I mean, when we go in, with Cups and a few other guys, even though Cups had a great game against Oregon, he didn't get a ton of production out of him. So it's tough when you don't get a lot of production out of your bench, and we haven't gotten much from that all year. And obviously, there's just been a ton of weight on Bruce's shoulders, and kind of, he gets a 28-point game, and it's just he's got to work so hard for everything, and it's it's got to be frustrating for him. But he's been a godsend, his whole career. I've loved watching that kid play, and but it does kind of feel like you're one or two pieces away, maybe, from just having a little bit more of a complete roster. Is kind of how I feel.
So 1 or 2 pieces away. Jake Diebler comes into this season with 14 players on the roster. One of those is a red shirt, or not a red shirt, but a walk-on from last year in Braylon Nash. So
Mm-hmm.
nothing against Braylon Nash, but you're really down to 13 players. Then
Sure.
you've got Josh Ojawuna, who it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't seem like he's going to play this year. So
Yeah.
now you're down to 12. And now, again, you have injuries. They're going to come up throughout the season. You're
Yeah.
down to 11 to 10. Numbers are really dwindling.
Really
So
are.
in terms of the construction of the roster that you've seen this year and the team that you see on the floor, you've said to this point they're not an NCAA tournament team. So do you, and I've said the exact same thing for what it's worth. At this point, I don't think even in the wins, even in the Notre Dame win, Notre Dame is not impressive. Even in, the Pitt, the North Carolina games, obviously, the Rutgers game going down by 16 points. I get it's a road game. I get it's a
Sure.
Big Ten game, but it's Rutgers is not impressive. I mean,
Yeah.
Rutgers is going to battle with Maryland for the cellar most likely this year in the Big Ten. So, what are some things that you think this team needs to tweak, needs to improve in order to make a push here against UCLA, Minnesota? Then you got the Michigan game, which will be huge, obviously. But then
Sure.
you got some lighter games with Penn State, Wisconsin, Maryland. You feel like you can win. So, what tweaks would you like to see, and how does this team get into the NCAA tournament?
I'm not sure necessarily what tweaks you want to see, but you certainly hope that they continue to get in the gym, continue to practice, and continue to get better, because a team can make strides throughout the course of a season. If you make up your mind that every day you're going to go in that gym and get a little bit better, clearly some of it is just getting healthy. But teams can make strides. They're going to have to defend better. They're going to have to rebound better. I thought in the first half, at least the first 10, 12 minutes against Washington, I thought they were just beautiful offensively. I mean, they just moved it. They really got anything they wanted. So whatever they did there, they got to find a way to have that more consistently and carry that out through the course of the game. And I think they just got to keep kind of doing what they've been doing. I personally would maybe look less at the zone. I mean, and again, I know there's a lot of different reasons to run a zone, to change the tempo, to control pace, to keep yourself out of foul trouble. And so again, I don't pretend to be in the minds of the coaching staff. I thought it probably hurt them more than it helped them in the Washington game. But ultimately, you got to find a way to keep getting Bruce shots. You got to keep the ball in his hands a lot. You got to hope Tilly is healthy and can be solid, and you got to continue to bring Bynum along, because I think he can be a difference maker. I really do. I mean, if he continues to play confidently and just shake that off, the second half of the Washington game, I think that kid's a stud, and I think you got to continue to find ways to get him the ball, and I think really getting him the ball around the basket. I think that's where he's most effective, getting him down on the block. I think you got to find a way to get Devin Royal some more touches, maybe closer to the basket. And obviously you're going to have to find ways to get Junie some open threes, because teams are simply not going to let him get open looks. They're going to run him off the 3-point line, force him to be a dribbler, to be a penetrator. And he's probably not quite as good as that part of his game. And then I really believe ultimately, it's going to take some more consistency with really toughness. I mean, I think there's been several games, Nebraska comes to mind, where down the stretch there was just 50-50 balls that they didn't come up with. The Washington game, you had multiple rebounds, and some of them were Wigoven that were just simply taken out of your hands. And in the Big Ten, with such an incredibly small margin of victory already, you cannot win without just those toughness plays down the stretch when it's nut cutting time. And that's something you can work on, and that's something you can work on in practice. And a coach, really drills it on you and holds you accountable for those things. And so I think, that handful of stuff there is something that could continue to help the Buckeyes and hopefully win some of these tough games they got coming up. And obviously they're going to have to take care of the ones on paper that they're supposed to win. And that's a lot easier said than done. But they have a few coming up here that, if they take care of them, I think they can set themselves up to roll into some of these tougher games, Michigan, Wisconsin, with some more confidence, and that's what they're going to have to do.
So you've mentioned a bunch of players and kind of your thoughts on them. I'm curious to get your thoughts on two specific players that fans are absolutely pounding the table right now for either more playing time or just any amount of playing time. The first one, kind of already mentioned Tayson. So
Yeah.
Tayson Chapman, he comes in as a 4-star, pretty high level recruit, good size at kind of the combo guard spot. Doesn't really get a lot of playing time as a freshman. My thoughts his freshman year, he looked pretty timid, pretty passive
Sure.
with the ball in his hands. Then he tears his ACL, doesn't get to play at all last year. What have you seen, whether it be from him on the floor in game or just in your time where you've been able to see practices? What do you see from Tayson Chapman? Is there anything that you can see that's holding him back from playing right now?
I will be totally honest. I have not seen enough of Chapman to be able to speak on it real consistently, to be honest with you. But what I can say is I've seen what he's done in the small sample size, and it sure looks like a guy that could help you out. And I thought when he got in there in very limited time against Washington, he got himself a steal, should have had an assist that Amari kind of messed up. I thought he came in and he held the floor and he gave you a little bit of a different look, some length and a guard there, and he's got a good looking stroke. And so I'd be willing to bet you're going to see him get some more opportunities. With that being said, I don't pretend to know as much as the coaching staff knows. I mean, they see the guy every single day, and there must be a reason that he's not getting the time that other people would like him to get. But I also think when you're kind of backs against the wall and you got some injuries and you're reeling, looking for different answers, I think you'll see maybe him get some more opportunities. Because I can't imagine that he can't do the things that Colin White has done so far. I mean, in Colin White, I see a guy with tons of potential, but I don't see somebody real confident out there. He's kind of been like the hot potato guy. He catches it and he's looking to reverse it right away without almost putting his eyes on the rim, which is a cardinal sin for any offensive player. Your first responsibility as an offensive player is to catch the ball, put your eyes on the rim, be a scoring threat, open up your view of the court. I mean, it's literally basics of how to be an offensive player is catch it, put your eyes on the rim and see the floor. And he's a guy that really has barely even done that. I thought in the Washington game, he had multiple times where he had really easy shots that he could have knocked down because he's a good shooter. And again, not to go ragging on a guy that's not getting a lot of minutes already, but I guess my point being, if you got a few guys that haven't done a ton yet, why not give somebody an opportunity? So I would probably be in agreement that maybe he needs to get a fresh look and another opportunity, but again, we don't see him every day, so it's a lot easier to sit here and throw stones in a glass house, So but maybe that'll be something. I hope he gets more opportunity. And again, so much of that stuff is earned in practice, and earned on a daily basis. So we'll see what happens there.
Yeah, I think there are players like Colin White, like Gabe Cupps, that behind closed doors are doing more than players like Tayson Chapman or Matthew Grujic can do right now, and I think that's why you see the disparity in playing time. I think on Colin White, I wonder sometimes if he steps on the floor as a kid from rural Ohio. Maybe you can kind of speak to that a little bit. Where, I mean, your recruitment was definitely different, obviously, than Colin White's, but Colin White was a guy who had to earn his offer from Ohio State.
Sure.
He had the interest in Ohio State. There was mutual interest there, but he had conversation after conversation, and it took him a while to get to the point where Chris Holtmann would offer him the scholarship, and then Diebler obviously keeps the scholarship offer intact for him, and there wasn't much thought for him. He knew he wanted to go to Ohio State, but now you're playing with 4 stars and 5 stars and guys who have contributed at the highest level, and you're playing against in the Big Ten against the highest competition.
Yeah.
So I do wonder if you're just not looking at the rim because you've told yourself, man, I'm just a 3-star from nowhere, Lima, Ohio, and that's why I don't look to the rim as much. So
Yeah,
I don't know if that's
yeah.
anything or not, but
I guarantee you that Colin White did not do that in high school. I guarantee you every time he got it, he was putting his eyes on the rim and being aggressive, and but that's part of exactly what you talked about of getting on a bigger stage, playing with better players, and you can have a loss of confidence, and it leads to doing some uncharacteristic things and playing with the mindset of, oh man, I just want to stay on the floor, as opposed to somebody that wants to attack and wants to do those things. So, I can guarantee you that Coach Diebler right now is thinking about all these things, and he's reeling and looking for answers. And I wouldn't be surprised at all to see some shakeup and some more minutes, maybe less minutes for certain guys. And I think that also, when you have some time off and you have some time for self-reflection, you have time to get in the gym multiple days to get to work without having a game to kind of worry about. So I'd be willing to bet that right now they're searching for a lot of answers and trying a lot of different things.
So at this point, we can kind of close off the conversation on Jake Diebler and this team here. Just take me through, at this point, what is your confidence level in Jake Diebler that he is the guy for Ohio State men's basketball? And I ask this not because I say this on the show all the time. It's not my area of expertise to evaluate if a coach can make it at Ohio State. That's never where I'll be. I can observe the results, but I can't critique it. So I just don't really traffic in that. I ask it because there's so many fans who are upset and are fed up with where the program is and didn't have trust in Jake Diebler from the start, so they've rooted against him ever since then. So, what would you say? I guess what would you say to the fan who just hates on the program because Jake Diebler is a head coach, and then kind of segue that into your confidence level in Jake Diebler overall?
Well, like I said before, I mean, I understand the frustration. I think that the bar has been set at a higher point than where we've been the past couple of years. But I personally still believe in Jake. I really do. I think he's a tremendous young coach. Comes from a basketball family. Ohio guy. He's got skin in the game. Uh, they have improved from last year. Have they improved as much as we all want them to? No. At the same time, it's not always easy being a young coach and particularly a newer head coach. It sometimes it takes years to kind of figure out what your style is and to just kind of learn more about your philosophies and so again I'm going to give Jake some slack. Again, it helps that I have a relationship with him and I respect the hell out of him and I think he's a great coach and I do understand the frustration. I understand that people want to see the program back to the glory days, if you will. And I think he can be the one to do it. With that being said, I think college basketball and the landscape has clearly drastically changed. So much of it nowadays is how much money can you offer a guy in the recruiting game, and it's just changed drastically, and the league's gotten tougher. And again, I still have all the faith in the world in Coach Diebler, but at the same time, I do understand people's frustrations.
So one last question here, and this actually comes from the Substack chat, the insider chat. Views from you'll have a seizure listening to this. Views from the shot podcast.substack.com/chat, or just go views from the shot podcast.substack.com and click on chat. But this comes from a paid subscriber. I want to get this in because it is relevant to you, Matt. So this comes from Grant. He says, I'd be curious to hear about Matt's take on the impact of social media on player development and team cohesiveness. We obviously have a few guys on the team that the coaching staff doesn't feel are ready for major minutes, yet fans are clamoring for them to get on the floor. I imagine it's hard for those players not to feed into the energy of feeling slighted, just like the fans. So during your playing days, Matt, players, you're not going to see all that noise online. And without the portal, it was more about development and earning your spot. So take me through just your general thoughts on that, and how do you think it's harder, first of all, for players in this era to get developed at the same program? And do you think there's any validity to, what, people are tweeting about me not getting playing time, I'm going to lean in and now I feel slighted?
Listen, there's no question it's harder nowadays. I mean, I think that like my senior year, it was like the first year Facebook came out. With that being said, there was like a few message boards back then, and I would scour it, and I got pissed off when people said things about me, and believe me, they said plenty of them. And so nowadays, yeah, of course, it's not easy. All these kids got a computer in their pocket at all times, and they can go and see what people are saying about them. So I guarantee you, people that the players are dialed in and they understand the sentiment of the fans, and they're absolutely on their socials looking at the stuff, which does not make it easier to be a player. It certainly doesn't make it easier to be a coach. It makes none of it easier. It's just part of how much different the landscape is than when I played 20 years ago, even though it feels like dinosaurs roamed the earth back then. But yeah, and I would assume that also is tougher on team camaraderie. I mean, you got there's just so much more outside noise now. And throw on top of it that there's a penalty-free transfer. I mean, back in my day, if you wanted to transfer, you had to sit out a year. You wanted to transfer within your conference, you had to sit out 2 years. I mean, so if you had somebody in your ear that was saying, "Oh, that guy doesn't respect you. He doesn't understand your game. You should get out of there," it wasn't just an easy decision. Like, okay, yeah, you're right. I should get out of here. I mean, so there was more. You had to have a little more grit, and you had to have a little bit more ability to fight through adversity. And so yeah, I think without question, it's harder being a player these days. And to me though, this has seemed like a really together group. And I hope it stays that way. Clearly, it gets harder to stay together and it gets harder to stay positive as the losses stack up, but again, I really believe Jake is going to be a guy that keeps this team dialed in, keeps them focused. And I think that they're going to continue to improve. And again, I'm not sold just yet that it's an NCAA tournament team or a team that's able to, be in the upper echelon of the Big Ten just yet. But there's a long way to go, and they got lots of opportunities to do so. And I'll be pulling for them.
Matt, anything else you wanted to cover here today? I didn't ask, or any closing thoughts on Ohio State basketball for this year, years to come, anything like that?
No, not that I can think about, but I just really appreciate you having me on and giving me an opportunity to answer some questions and talk about the program that I care a lot about, and so I really appreciate it.
Yeah, you got it. Thanks so much for being on, Matt. Always a pleasure talking Ohio State hoops and whatever else we can get into here on Views from the Schott podcast. We'll be back on Friday with a UCLA preview. So make sure you subscribe wherever you get your podcast, subscribe on YouTube, like the video on YouTube if you made it this far, to make sure you can get that as well. Until next time, I shut up before you shut me off. Thanks for listening today, and go Bucks.